Let me tell you something that will make a lot of people uncomfortable. Women over 40 are not sitting by the window waiting for someone to save them. They are not collecting cats to fill the emptiness. They are not broken, lonely, or desperate. And if that idea makes you uneasy, it is because everything you were taught about a woman's worth was built on a lie. A lie so old, so deeply rooted in the collective unconscious that even Carl Jung himself warned us about it decades ago. I know you feel it, that quiet ache in the chest that shows up at 2 in the morning when the house is silent and the world is asleep. You have given everything, your patience, your body, your dreams, your best years, to people who never once asked how you were doing. You bent yourself into shapes that were never yours, and one ordinary Tuesday morning, you looked in the mirror and did not recognize the woman staring back. That was not a breakdown. That was the beginning of the most important conversation of your life, the one between you and yourself. In the next few minutes, I am going to walk with you through something that most channels will never have the courage to say out loud. We are going to explore, through the lens of Carl Jung's deepest work, why millions of women across the world are quietly stepping away from the search for romantic love and finding something infinitely more powerful on the other side. This is not a trend. This is a psychological revolution. And Jung saw it coming nearly a century ago. Jung dedicated his life to understanding the invisible forces that shape who we are. He mapped the shadow, the anima, the process of individuation. And what he discovered about women in the second half of life is not just fascinating, it is life-altering. It is the kind of truth that, once you hear it, you cannot unhear. And I believe with everything in me that you were meant to hear it today. Not by accident, not by coincidence, but because something inside you already knows what I am about to say. So if you are ready, truly ready, to hear the truth that society has been hiding about the power that lives inside a woman who has stopped looking for anyone else to complete her, do something small but meaningful right now. Hit that like button, not for the algorithm, not for me, for you. Let it be the first tiny act of choosing yourself today. And then stay with me, because what comes next might just change the way you see your entire life. The moment she chose herself. Why solitude became her superpower. There is a moment that arrives without warning. It does not knock. It does not send a letter. It shows up like thunder in a clear sky. And suddenly, everything you believed about love, about companionship, about needing someone by your side to feel complete, it all collapses like a house of cards in a storm. For women over 40, this moment is not a breakdown. It is a breakthrough. It is the instant the soul whispers what the mind has been too afraid to hear. You spent years building yourself around someone else's blueprint. You cooked dinners you did not want to cook. You laughed at jokes that were not funny. You swallowed your rage and called it patience. And somewhere along the way, the woman you were born to be got buried under layers of expectations that were never yours to carry. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive a world that rewards obedience over authenticity. But here is what nobody tells you. The moment you stop looking for a man to complete you is not the moment you give up on love. It is the moment you finally begin to understand what love actually is. It is not a rescue mission. It is not a transaction. It is the overflow of a cup that is already full. And that cup, it was empty for decades because you kept pouring it into someone else's glass. Jung wrote about the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, stripped of every mask, every role, every performance. And he noticed something extraordinary. Women in the second half of life do not shrink. They expand. They do not become less. They become dangerously more. Imagine a tree that spent 40 years growing roots in the dark. Now the roots are deep enough. Now the trunk breaks through the concrete. Now the branches reach for the sky without apology. But wait, if solitude is truly a superpower, why does society keep telling you it is a disease? Why does every magazine, every movie, every family dinner come with the same unspoken question? Are you seeing anyone? The answer to that question will change the way you see yourself forever. And it begins with what Jung called the shadow. The part of you that has been screaming in silence for 40 years. The shadow of romantic obsession. What Jung said about chasing love, there is a hunger that lives inside every human being. It disguises itself as romance. It dresses up as butterflies in your stomach. It calls itself destiny. But Carl Jung saw through the costume. He called it projection. The unconscious act of placing your unmet needs, your unfulfilled dreams, your abandoned inner child onto another person, and then calling it love. And for women over 40, this projection has been running the show for decades without permission. Think about the first time you fell in love. Remember that electric feeling, that sense that the world finally made sense. Now ask yourself an honest question. Were you in love with that person, or were you in love with the version of yourself that person made you feel like? Jung would say you were chasing your own shadow. You were running after a reflection in someone else's eyes, hoping that if they loved you, you would finally have permission to love yourself. Here is the secret that therapists charge hundreds of dollars to whisper. Every relationship you have ever had was a mirror. The men who broke your heart showed you the places where you were already broken. The ones who abandoned you showed you how long ago you abandoned yourself. This is not punishment. This is the unconscious mind doing its sacred work. It sends you the exact teacher you need, wrapped in the exact pain you are ready to face. And here is where it gets uncomfortable. The woman who stops chasing love is not the woman who has been hurt too many times. She is the woman who has finally become brave enough to look in the mirror and say, "I am enough without you." That sentence is not a wall. It is a door. It is the door Jung called individuation, and on the other side of it is a version of yourself that does not need to perform, to please, to shrink, or to beg for crumbs of affection from someone else's table. But if the shadow holds the key to freedom, why do most people run from it? Why do we binge-watch romantic comedies instead of sitting in the silence where the truth lives? And what if I told you that the shadow of romantic obsession is not your enemy? It is the greatest gift your unconscious mind has ever given you. The next topic will reveal exactly how to unwrap that gift, and it involves a concept Jung considered the most misunderstood force in the human psyche. Anima reclaimed. When a woman integrates her own masculine energy. Jung introduced a concept that most people misunderstand completely. He called it the anima and the animus. The animus is the unconscious masculine principle living inside every woman. For decades, society told you to suppress it. Be soft, be gentle, be agreeable. And every time you push down your ambition, your anger, your fierce independence, you handed a piece of your power to someone else and called it femininity. But something shifts after 40. The Animus stops whispering and starts roaring. You find yourself saying no without guilt. You find yourself walking away from tables where love is conditional. You find yourself building empires from the ashes of relationships that tried to keep you small. This is not bitterness. This is integration. This is the moment when the feminine and the masculine inside you stop fighting and start dancing together like partners who finally learn the same rhythm. Imagine a woman who spent 20 years waiting for a man to fix the broken shelf in the kitchen. One day she picks up the hammer herself, and as she drives the first nail, she realizes that she was never waiting for the shelf to be fixed. She was waiting for permission to be powerful. That permission never came from outside. It was always buried inside her, wrapped in layers of cultural conditioning that told her strength was masculine and therefore not hers to claim. And if you think this integration makes a woman cold or closed off, you have missed the entire point. A woman who has reclaimed her inner masculine energy does not reject love. She redefines it. She stops accepting love that feels like work and starts attracting love that feels like home. Because when you carry your own completeness, you stop tolerating relationships built on desperation and start choosing ones built on genuine resonance. But here is what will keep you awake tonight. Jung said that most people never achieve this integration. Most people die wearing masks they put on at 20. So what makes some women crack the code after 40? While others stay trapped in the same patterns forever? The answer is buried in the next topic, and it involves the single most powerful psychological event that can happen in a human lifetime: the individuation trigger. Why 40 is the age of psychological awakening. Carl Jung believed that the first half of life is about building an ego. You go to school, you get a job, you marry, you raise children. You construct an identity from the expectations of your culture, your family, your religion. But the second half of life, that is where the real work begins. That is where you stop asking, "What does the world want me to be?" and start asking, "Who am I when nobody is watching?" And for women, this question hits like an earthquake around 40. It starts with a feeling you cannot name, a restlessness, a hunger that food cannot satisfy and sleep cannot cure. You look at your life and everything looks fine on paper, but inside there is a void shaped like a question mark. This is what Jung called the call to individuation, the soul demanding that you strip away every false identity and meet yourself, perhaps for the first time, in total raw honesty. Here is what makes this process terrifying and beautiful at the same time. To individuate, you must lose everything you thought you were: the good wife, the perfect mother, the accommodating friend. These roles do not die quietly. They scream. They bargain. They make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. But on the other side of that guilt is a freedom so vast that it feels like flying for the first time after a lifetime of crawling. Think about a caterpillar inside the cocoon. If you cut the cocoon open to help the butterfly, it dies. The struggle is not an obstacle to transformation. It is transformation itself. Every tear you shed at 40, every relationship you released, every night you spent alone staring at the ceiling, wondering if you made the right choice. That was you dissolving inside the cocoon. That was the old you dying so the real you could be born. And yet most people resist this process. They go back to old relationships. They numb themselves with distractions. They rebuild the same prison with different furniture. So what separates the women who emerge, transformed from the ones who stay stuck? It has everything to do with a paradox that even the most brilliant philosophers struggle to understand. And I will reveal it in the final topic. Stay with me. The paradox of detachment. Why men appear when you stop looking here is the strangest truth in all of psychology. The moment you stop looking for love is the exact moment love finds you. Not the desperate, clinging, please complete me kind of love. The real kind. The kind that arrives like a sunrise. Not because you demanded it, but because the night was finally over. Jung called this synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence that occurs when your inner world aligns with the outer world in ways that logic cannot explain. Think about it like this. When you are starving, everything looks like food. You grab the first thing you see and swallow it whole, not because it is nourishing, but because you are desperate. But when you are full, when you have fed yourself with purpose, with passion, with the deep satisfaction of knowing who you are, you do not grab, you choose. And the difference between grabbing and choosing is the difference between surviving and living. Women over 40 who have stopped looking for men have not built walls. They have built gardens, and gardens do not chase the sun. They grow toward it naturally. The energy that once went into fixing broken men, into performing happiness, into making themselves smaller, so someone else could feel bigger. That energy is now flowing inward. It is building something magnificent, and the world can feel it. People can sense when someone carries their own light. And here is the final revelation that ties everything together. Jung said that wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is the integration of every part of yourself. The light and the shadow, the feminine and the masculine, the strength and the vulnerability. A woman who reaches this state does not repel love. She becomes a magnet for it. But she no longer needs it the way a drowning person needs air. She welcomes it the way an ocean welcomes a river, with open arms and no desperation. So the next time someone asks you why you stopped looking for a man, smile. Not because you do not have an answer, but because the answer is so vast, so deep, so profoundly beautiful, that words cannot carry its weight. You stopped looking because you finally found yourself. And that is the most powerful love story ever told. We have walked a long road together in these few minutes. And I want you to know, I did not share any of this to convince you of anything. I shared it because I know what it feels like to carry a question inside your chest that nobody around you seems to understand. You came here perhaps looking for an answer about love, about loneliness, about whether something is wrong with you for not wanting what everyone says you should want. But what you found, I hope, is something far more precious than an answer. You found a mirror, and in that mirror you saw a woman who is not broken, a woman who is not behind. A woman who is exactly where she needs to be. Carl Jung spent decades sitting with people in the dark rooms of their own psyche, listening to stories just like yours. And the one thing he repeated again and again in book after book, in lecture after lecture, was this: the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your mother wanted you to be. Not who your ex-husband needed you to be, not who society insists you should be at 40, at 50, at 60, but who you are when you strip away every mask, every role, every performance, and stand barefoot in the truth of your own existence. And here is what I want to leave you with tonight. The woman who stops looking for a man is not a woman who has given up on love. She is a woman who has finally given love to the one person who deserved it all along. Herself. That is not selfishness. That is not loneliness. That is the bravest, most radical, most beautiful act of self-respect a human being can perform. And if nobody has told you this today, I am telling you now, you are allowed to choose yourself. You always were. So here is my question for you, and I want you to sit with this long after this video ends. What if the person you have been searching for in every relationship, in every late-night conversation, in every moment you felt incomplete, what if that person was always inside you, waiting patiently in the silence, waiting for you to stop running long enough to notice? What if the love story of your life is the one you are finally ready to write with yourself? If anything in this video moved something inside you, even a small tremor, even a single tear, even a breath that felt different from the others, leave a like. Not because it helps me, but because it is your way of saying yes to yourself. Comment one single word below that describes what you are feeling right now. Just one word. Let it be your declaration. And subscribe, because in the next video I am going to reveal what Carl Jung called the most dangerous mistake a woman can make after she finally wakes up. It is not what anyone expects, and it changes everything. I will see you there.